Hello, everyone. I'm Harpreet Singh. I'm thrilled to introduce Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed. He's a professor emeritus of political science at Stockholm. He currently serves as an honorary senior fellow of the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. He's published several books, including the award-winning Jinnah, His Successes, Failures, and Role in History. His book, The Punjab Bloodied, Partitioned and Cleansed, published by Oxford University Press, won the Best Nonfiction Book Award at the Karachi Literature Festival and the Lahore Literary Festival in 2013. The book has also been published in Urdu, Hindi, and Punjabi in the Gurmukhi script. Professor Ahmed is here to speak about the partition. The partition is often referred to as the Partition of India, but in reality, it was the partition of Punjab and Bengal. The event is often celebrated as the independence of India and Pakistan. Unfortunately for Punjabis and Bengalis, this tragic event left over 10 million people homeless and resulted in the largest migration in history. Over 1 million Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs were killed as a result of British mapmaking. I would like to welcome Professor Ahmed to Harvard and ask him to enlighten us with his talk.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harpreet Singh ji. Last time I missed meeting you, but now we are together, and it's a great privilege, in fact, an honor to come and address this very distinguished gathering. And so I come directly to the topic. The partitions of India, Punjab, and Bengal, with special emphasis and a comparison between what happened in Punjab and Bengal. I think people want to know more about that. But let me first of all present the underlying logic on which the partition was based. And of course, the blame game can be played to one's advantage anytime. You choose somebody you don't like, and then you start saying that he or she started it. And then you can find convenient dates here and there. So I would not waste my time in trying to find a definitive date when this happened. But what we know is that after 1857, you hear echoes of the two-nation theory being heard on all sides. For example, if we come to the Muslim side, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, otherwise a modernizer, educationalist, and so on, was simultaneously a social conservative, very conservative. But in his book, Asbab-e Baghawat-e-Hind, Causes of the Indian Mutiny, he has many complaints about what the British have done to India, including that they have introduced modern education to Muslim women, which the Muslims find very offensive. So this is one, and among other complaints. But he ends up with a recommendation which is, I think, has been very helpful to go forward with the divide and rule sort of politics. And he says that one major flaw in the British policy in India was to have Hindus and Muslims in the same fighting units of the army. And when they are in the same units, they live together, they even start cooking together and socialize, and a sense of brotherhood develops among them. So this was something which was at the base of the 1857 uprising, because as you know, while it was started by the Bengalis with a large section of the Biharis taking part in it, when they came finally to Delhi, they declared Bahadur Shah Zafar as the Emperor of India. And so you can see from the aspiration of these people who were protesting. Yeah, that for them, the English East India Company was an illegitimate force in the subcontinent, and the rightful ruler of the subcontinent was Bahadur Shah Zafar. As you know, Sir Syed also gained great fame for defending British lives during the uprising, and then he became very important for the British to relate themselves to the Muslims. He did try in a progressive way to explain that like Christianity, Islam was also a rationalist religion, and there is no conflict between science and Islam. You know, this is what the Christian argument had developed, that both are rational religions. So Sir Syed has to be seen in these different roles. On the other hand, almost about the same time, in 1858, in Bengal, somebody called Badro Paidar, Banerjee, it would be, I think, in anglicized form. He comes up with an argument that Muslim rule in Bengal has been uh, destructive of Hindu culture, and it's the British rule which has liberated them from the yoke of Muslim oppression. So what we find interesting is that Sir Syed, talking about the two-nation theory, and this gentleman in Bengal talking about the two-nation theory, look up to the British as the saviors. And so that's the politics of the two-nation theory. Over time, it has been tossed around on both sides. There is a book by Professor K.K. Aziz, The Idea of Pakistan, spread over 4 volumes. And if you are interested, you can always look up the chronology or the timeline of who said what. But I would say like this, that this idea was around that in a future India without British rule, there will always be a problem who would rule India. What came during this period was a new entity, and that was the Indian National Congress. The Indian National Congress, although it was founded by, let's say, liberal section of the British bureaucracy, civil servants, it very soon developed the credentials of being a national platform. And they argued that Indians should be associated in the running of the empire, and they should be given jobs at higher levels of the administration. And I think that irked the British as this appeal became stronger. And when they introduced ideas of voting and elections and representative government, for them, this was their way of ruling in the British Isles, and so they tried to present that formula also in India, but restricting franchise to a very select number of people. I think initially it was less than 1%, then it increased to 2-3%. And people who paid a certain amount of revenue and later on who had an education, I think, must be metric or more, could gain the right to vote. In 1906, the Muslim gentry, maybe I should have mentioned, Sir Syed also instructed the Muslim aristocracy that they should associate with the British to keep the Indian National Congress at bay. So this was the triangle which was evolving at that time. And the followers of Sir Syed then, under the leadership of Sir Agha Khan, called upon the Viceroy Lord Minto and presented a petition which had already been read and agreed by the Secretary of State Lord Morley, where they pleaded that in an open electoral system, the Muslims will always be at a disadvantage. One, they were small in numbers. Second, educationally, they were not as advanced as the Hindus were. Uh, and in this petition, they also emphasized that they are a very important community placed in two strategic parts of the subcontinent, the northeast and the northwest. Most of the attacks on India have taken part from the northwest, but population from the northeast also trickled on into India throughout the ages. 1906, this petition is presented. 1905, a year earlier, the background may be, I don't want to spend too much time on it because we have to come quickly to the 1930s where I think the real story begins. But without this background, it's not possible to explain what happened, how, and why. So in 1905, Lord Curzon, the Viceroy, decided to partition Bengal, ostensibly on grounds that it was too large to be administered uh, uh, efficiently. So Bengal was partitioned, and initially the reports are that everybody was surprised. But over time, since the offices moved from Calcutta to Dhaka and so on, and in eastern Bengal, the Muslims were in a majority, uh, the partition of Bengal brought new jobs to the Muslims, and the Muslims largely in Bengal were a pauperized people. Most landowners were Hindus, and if there was any industry or trade, it was in West Bengal, mostly Calcutta based. So we find that among Muslims, this awareness that the partition is good for them evolves into the founding of the All India Muslim League, I think on the last day or the 30th of December 1906. Only a few, 2 months earlier, the Shimla deputation had waited upon the Viceroy. So in 1906, the British government uh, gave the Muslims of India, inverted commas, separate electorates. And not only separate electorates, but also weightage, which is representation over and above their number of the population. And we find that as we enter into the 20th century and the era of mass politics starts emerging with the new coastal cities and industrial production taking place, the Indian National Congress is, let's say, it is gradually radicalized until Mahatma Gandhi comes and transforms that party from an elite sort of party, definitely proto nationalist. But with Mahatma Gandhi now becoming the leader of this party, it opens its doors to all Indians. And I think a nominal amount of membership, annual membership was charged. So the Congress party becomes a platform where uh, the nationalist awareness starts converging. And so that's the 20th century. And as I said, 1909, the Muslims have been constitutionally separated from the rest of India. So they were encouraged to develop their communal interests vis-a-vis the rest of India. Just to bring in the role of Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Jinnah Sahab originally was a Congress leader, and if you look at his earlier phase, he is on record opposing the partition of Bengal. Then he is on record on opposing the Shimla deputation, on opposing also the founding of the Muslim League. But after 1909, uh, in terms of electoral arithmetic, mathematics, whichever term would apply, for the Muslims, it became easier to win elections because it was a limited constituency. So, ironically, uh, it was the Indian National Congress which encouraged Jinnah Sahib to join the Muslim League. And the reason they encouraged Jinnah to join the Muslim League was that up until then, it was Sir Sayyid's leadership which had said, be close to the British, keep away from the British. So Jinnah Sahib was dispatched with this mission to bring Hindus and Muslims together. And the high point of Jinnah's achievement is then the Lucknow Pact, which was supported both by the Muslim League and the Indian National Congress. And uh, the Lucknow Pact created a problem at the same time, and that was that whereas Jinnah was able to convince the Indian National Congress leaders that Muslims in the Hindu majority provinces should be given uh, greater representation than their numbers, almost double. For example, in UP, they were 14% Muslims and they were given 30%. In Madras, they were 7% and they were given 50%. So you almost double representation was granted to Muslims. But in the two Muslim majority provinces that we are concerned with, in Punjab, the Muslim majority of 56% was deflated down to about 49%. And in Bengal, although Jinnah Sahib was able to, get 40% for the representation of Bengali Muslims, the actual numbers were 52% of the Bengali population. But since the qualifications was how much revenue paid and if education, the Bengali Muslims were far behind the Hindus of Bengal. And so at that time, only 10% of Bengali Muslims were holding the right to vote. So I would say that from 10 actual percent to 40% is a great increase. Even in Bengal, some people started arguing that our majority has been sacrificed to favor the Muslims of the minority provinces. And interestingly enough, in Punjab, Alama Sir Muhammad Iqbal, Dr. Iqbal is on record, Sir Shafi is on record, these main players, Sir Fazle Hussain, all three were opposed to the Punjab Muslims being denied their majority in order to satisfy or to balance the overrepresentation given to Muslims in the Hindu majority provinces. So that's the beginning of this triangular sort of thing. The British always looking for how to balance the claims of the Indian National Congress vis-a-vis the Muslim League. In 1919, they went even further and they granted separate electors to the Sikhs of Punjab. Rajiv. And also to Anglo-Indians and I think Europeans in Bengal. So these were some of the things being used by the British that wherever there was a majority, they could balance it by decreasing the number of the majority to give greater representation to the minorities. And it seemed to function quite well until we come to the end of the First World War. And that's the turning point in my understanding of how things went awry, in the freedom struggle. First of all, it's the British, I think, who bear the greatest responsibility for forcing Indians towards radicalism. Because during the First World War, Indians of all sorts had helped the British in the war effort. There were more than 2 million people who voluntarily joined the British Army, and they fought in all those, you know, well-known Gallipoli and here and there in France and so on. In Baghdad, all these places you had Indians fighting, Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs. Uh, so at the end of the war, it was expected that the British would, and by the way, there had been big donations given to the British during the war by the princes and by the notables, the landowners, anybody who mattered. Even Mahatma Gandhi recruited soldiers for the British Army. By the way, Jinnah Sahib at that time was not taking part in this. So at that time, it is Gandhiji who you find going out to recruit people for the British Army. But after the war, the British shocked the Indian sensibilities by introducing the Rowlatt Acts. Now, the Rowlatt Acts uh, gave the right to the government to arrest anyone on a mere suspicion that he was conspiring to overthrow the legitimate government of India, which is the British government. And the basis of that, in actual facts, was very little. There had been some terrorism in Bengal by the Bhadralok, including one bomb thrown at, I think it was Viceroy Harding or Ripon, one of these characters. He survived, but uh, some of the people around died at that time. So some terrorism in Bengal by the Bhadralok, the Hindu upper caste who were opposed to the partition of Bengal. And then in Punjab, we find the Ghadar party, being first formed in northwestern USA and Canada. And this classic story of the Japanese ship coming to the harbor in Vancouver and for 2 months not being denied the right to disembark. And they went back uh, vowing to overthrow the British rule, hence the name, the Ghadar Party. It was to, like the 1857 sort of thing. And the Ghadarites were betrayed already by the police infiltration and so on. Many were arrested before they could come to Punjab. Some did manage. But the Punjab uprising was also smashed without much of a problem. Professor Harish Puri has written a book on this, where, according to him, the Punjabi people did not understand why they were into this sort of uprising. Because the general feeling was that whatever was British rule, it had been benign to Punjab. And therefore, maybe uh, the landowners and the religious figures and all were very pro-British in Punjab. Anyhow, the Rowlatt Acts then brings Indian opinion together. And I've quoted Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah's speech, which which condemns British policy for being completely, uh, uh, unsympathetic to legitimate Indian concerns for self-government. And Mahatma Gandhi also. So everybody who met at that time was opposed to the Rowlatt Acts. The Rowlatt Acts then, it's a long story and I know I have to cover a lot, gave birth to the infamous attack at Jallianwala Bagh, the 13th April 1919, in which uh, some people claim 1,000 Indians left dead. The British figure is, I think, 371. Whatever the figure, it was uh, completely unjustified. There was no sign of a rebellion taking place. And in any case, Mahatma Gandhi was outspokenly against the use of violence. Some violence had taken place before Dyers opened the fire. But those details you can always look up in the books which are in the field now. But my main argument is that 1919 is when Indian politics is radicalized generally. And the Congress Party emerges as the party leading people forward towards self rule initially. And uh, we find another issue emerging at this time, and that is the Khilafat movement. Khilafat movement is misrepresented a lot, both in India and in Pakistan. And I think I'll use this opportunity to share my findings on it. First of all, to say that Jinnah was opposed to the Khilafat issue is absolute rubbish, because I've quoted him twice. In 1919, he was part of a delegation which had gone to England to plead to the British not to dismember the Ottoman Empire. You know, before the war, for Indian Muslims, especially the Sunni Muslims, it was a problem that how could they fight in a war against the Khalifa? And the Khalifa is a one could say spiritual sort of symbol of Muslim unity. Huh? But the British had uh, convinced the Muslims that at the end of the war, they will not take away Makkah, Medina, and Baghdad from the Ottomans. They would be left with the Ottomans. But after the war, all this was taken away. So there was a popular movement of Muslims against uh, British betrayal, they said, of the promise they had made, although there is no official promise made, but this is the assurances which were given by the deputy commissioners and others who were recruiting Muslims into the British army. Then, now these Khilafatists wanted to go out in the streets to protest. Jinnah Sahib was not willing to do that. So that's where you find Jinnah uh, taking a different stand. Although in 1920, I quoted him saying that first they took away our liberty, which is the Rowlatt text, and now they are taking away our faith, which is the Khalifa. So Jinnah is as emphatic as anybody. To blame Gandhi on just alone is just politics, I would say. Now the Muslims go to Gandhiji, it's not the other way around. Tell me, what should Gandhi do? If he refuses to support a popular concern of the Muslims, then he has no moral right to claim Muslim support for the freedom of India. I think in good faith, he agreed to do that. And then comes this non-cooperation movement, which maybe Gandhiji was convinced by these people it was a bit too radical. We should return all the titles, stop buying British products, even burning their garments and so on. Not many people were willing to do that. There was opposition within the Congress to this as well. But that's the breakup point that Jinnah, who had some other grievances against Gandhi, now in 1920 he dissociated from the Congress party, and for a long time Jinnah was in the wilderness, but finally decided that if he can't be the leadership of all Indians, the leader of all Indians, he should somehow become the leader of the biggest minority, which is Muslims. So I would say that from 1920 till about 1935, Jinnah is involved in uh, not exactly a struggle, but a contest to be the leader of the Muslims, which means the leader of the Muslim League. So, if we now move on it, where were the chances for keeping India united lost, and what happened that led to the partition? Then we find that after this, the 1920 non-cooperation movement, many of them were sent to jail, some to the Andaman Islands, and so on. Gandhi himself was sentenced to 6 years, but I think that was commuted to 1.5 years later, and he was freed because of good conduct and so on. So the 1920s is where a number of events happen, which sort of this Hindu-Muslim unity created by the Khilafat movement. And I've quoted Som Anand. His book is Lahore, a Lost City. So if you are interested, you can check it. he says that until then, uh, Lahore or Punjab Hindus, uh, speaking about his own father, uh, when they went out in the bazaar and their body touched a Muslim, they would come back, change their clothes, and take a shower. But after the Khilafat movement, it was like Hindus and Muslims becoming brothers. So Gandhiji's call and the reception of Muslims and Hindus, at least in northern India, was a very positive one. But I'm told now that somebody from the Khilafat, inspired by the Khilafat sort of call, then went to South India or was from South India, and the Bopla uprising took place where the character of this changed completely because they attacked Hindu landlords, or let's say Hindus, this Muslim group. And some people say that that's the beginning of Hindu nationalism emerging, in opposition to Gandhi and the Congress's mission that all Indians, Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs and others are part of one nation. So, whereas the Muslim League represented Muslim communalism, we find among Hindus this sort of feeling emerging after the Bopla uprising. And if you see uh, uh, Savarkar's book Hindutva is 1923, which comes after Bopla uprising. So you can see this fear of a future without the British having its echo on both sides. Uh, on the other side, for example, I have quoted people in 1880, Muharram Ali Chishti in Lahore, writing that we need to have an Islamic state in northern India. So this idea from the Muslim side was there. In Punjab also, there was always a big question that if uh, the Hindi-speaking parts of Punjab are taken away, what will be the consequences? Uh, because Hindus, that Hindi-speaking Haryana and now Haryana and central Punjab gave the Hindus and Sikhs a strong position. But if this was taken away, it became a Muslim majority provinces overwhelmingly. So these were some of the things which were being discussed. And I would imagine behind them must be all the CID and other agencies encouraging people to disturb the freedom movement. You know, this is never written down and no records are kept. But we know how politics is conducted in our times, and those times must be very similar. So I would say that moving into the 1920s, as politics is radicalized, there is one effort made to keep India united, and that is the formation of the Motilal Nehru Committee. This committee was called by the Indian National Congress, where all political parties were invited. The Communist parties were invited, the different Hindu parties were invited, Sikh parties, Parsi parties, Brahmin parties, non-Brahmin parties. So there was no party which was excluded to come together and let's make a constitution for India which would be agreeable to all. And in 1928, finally this Nehru report emerges, and I would like to share those findings because very often in the way this is presented by scholars, there is always a twist. But I think we have to correct this historical sort of distortion. It said uh, there will be no state religion. Men and women will have equal rights. India will be a federation with a strong center. And it gave 39 items to the center and 69 items to the provinces. It said that Hindustani will be the national language of India with two official scripts, Devanagari, in which Hindi is written, and this Persian Urdu. So both were to be, and each province, Haji, Harpreet will have the right to have their own mother tongue as the medium of instruction as well as for conducting their affairs. I don't think a better proposal to keep India united, in which I think everybody got a fair share, was possible at that time. And I have actually given evidence that a section of the Muslim League was in favor of accepting it. And in 1929, when finally the Muslim parties met in Delhi to decide this, uh, the pro Motilal Nehru report Muslims uh, were making speeches that why this is good even for Muslims. And then Chaudhry Khalifur Zaman, his book Pakistan, the pathway to Pakistan, he says that suddenly the hall was invaded by uh, tough sort of necks who one by one picked up these people and threw them out. And then Jinnah and Sir Shafi came in. Jinnah by that time didn't know what to do about it, but the Sir Sayyid followers had convinced them. They decided to reject the Nehru report. And I think that's the turning point because the Nehru report was a very fair basis of a constitution. In fact, I've argued if you look at the Indian constitution, all these features are part of it. And among them is also included the 1931 fundamental rights declared by the Congress Party at Karachi, as well as the 1932 Pune Pact, where Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar had agreed. All this is part of the Indian Constitution. Maybe I should even mention, because this is now in India a big problem. In 1931, the Congress even passed a resolution saying that the minorities will not be forced to accept fundamental rights which affect their personal law. So this was also included in the Indian Constitution out of good faith, I think. But it's, politics is one way and there are intended and unintended consequences. This is how history moves forward. 1928, the chance of giving India is dashed. 1935, the the Government of India Act is introduced, which increases the right to vote to about 10 to 11% of the Indian population, which meant 35 million people. And the first elections then are called in 1937. If you look at the manifestos of the Muslim League and the Indian National Congress, they are not very different. Both of them want substantive self-rule granted. The Congress by that time had given a call for total independence. The Muslim League is not demanding that, it is demanding special protections for the Muslims, separate electors and weightage. So the elections were held and in 1937, and when the results were announced, the Indian National Congress triumphed in the Hindu majority provinces. It also got an overwhelming support in the most Muslim province of India, the northwestern frontier province. In Sindh, Allah Baksh Sumru and his Ittihad party formed the government. In Punjab, it was the Punjab Unionist Party which formed the government. So the Muslim League was routed in the Muslim majority provinces. No seat in Sindh, where the Muslims were 70%. In Punjab, where they were 57%, 2 seats, which became 1, because one of them crossed the border and joined the Punjab Unionist Party. And in Northwest Frontier Province, no seats at all. So you can see that in 37, the Muslims were not voting for the Muslim League. And the Muslim League, as up until now, was not demanding Pakistan either. So we have to understand where the nature of politics changes. What happens then is that in 1936, 1 year before the election, at Lucknow, Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the president of the Indian National Congress, delivers his presidential address where he says that in future India, we will abolish Zimidari or Jagirdari. and we will strengthen the rights of the peasantry, and we will remodel India in the experience of the socialist 5-year plans of the Soviet Union. I think that is when alarm bells began to ring in many parts of India, especially in London and Delhi, because for the British, we all have phobias, and the British phobia about Russia goes back all the way back to 1830s, when they were still not controlling the whole of India. And if you remember this famous writer Rudyard Kipling, who won the Nobel Prize, his book Kim's Gun, which is based on Lahore, is actually about the people sent there as horse traders who were there to gather intelligence. Huh? So for the British, after 1917, the Russian uh, uh, threat had multiplied many times, because it was also the center of uh, an ideology of international consequences, communism. So I think that's one thing. The Muslim landlords were frightened by what was going to happen, and we find Mr. Jinnah then taking advantage of this, because I don't know how much of this is to be debated, but there is one sort of literature which says that before the elections in UP, the Muslim League and the Congress had agreed that whatever the result, we'll form a coalition government, because their programs are not very different from one another, and the Hindu landlords and Muslim landlords were part of another land-owning party. Now, my Indian colleagues say that there was no such understanding, and this is a sort of, uh, story created later on. Maybe so. But what cannot be denied is that after the election results showed that the Muslims have not voted for the Muslim League, uh, uh, Jawaharlal Nehru, on the advice of Rafi Ahmed Kidwai, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, and some say even, anyhow, these two made a statement that those Muslim leaders who want to be considered for a ministership have to resign from the Muslim League and join the Congress. At that time, I think Jinnah, people want to know which is my opinion about his leadership qualities. I would say he was a natural born leader. That cannot be denied. A lesser leader would have caved in, but he said no. From henceforth I'm going to use communalism. These are his words, and he confided this to the governor of Bombay, Lord Brabourne, that henceforth I'll make the Muslims realize that unless they join ranks, they would be under permanent Hindu Congress rule and so on. And I think that's the turning point where Jinnah Sahab, who was on the margins, now assumed leadership of a party confronting the Indian national Congress. But still, I think 2 years had, for this to become mainstream, had to pass. And that was on the 1st of September 1939, the Second World War breaks out. On the 3rd, the British government announces that they have entered the war, and India is also committed to the war by Lord Lilithgow. And on the 4th, Mahatma Gandhi goes and meets the Viceroy Lord Lilithgow and says that I would be greatly unhappy if bombs were to fall on Westminster and so on, and I would want Indians to help the British in this hour of need. But the Indian National Congress leadership passed a resolution saying that we will not support the war effort. Their argument, I say, intellectually, from a political science point of view, makes sense, but not politically. And that is, they said that you say we are fighting this war against fascism for the freedom of the world. How can we, who are an enslaved people, support such a war? First, you pass, powers to us, then we will do our duty. Now, that was an intellectually very uh, sound argument, but how did it relate to the reality of those times? The British were hell bent on holding on to India because they were hoping to recruit once again 2.5 million soldiers for them. And so on the 7th of September, Jinnah Sahib goes and says, now you should realize the importance of the Muslim League. We will support the war effort, but at the end of the war, you will have to agree to grant us the right of self-determination. Which, by the way, the British never did categorically, not explicitly. They only have a statement issued, I think, in August 1940, saying that no future constitution of India would be agreeable if the minorities do not accept it. Now, that can mean anything. But uh, now I have given a lot of facts in my Jinnah book. Has anyone got my book with him? नहीं कोई भी नहीं लाया साहब. That's a pity. That's a pity because I had given one to Chandrapal ji and he's given it to you. I think. आज आपको लेके आना.
I actually bought another one, so I have two books.
I needed now to quote something. Let me rely on my memory. Okay. So these are the turning points. Nothing is written in the stars. I think it's human error, human ingenuity, human calculations which make a difference. So that's what I'm trying to present before you. Then Lilith Go sends a message to Jinnah Bhai. Okay, now demand something concrete. So it's from the British that the Muslims are encouraged to demand something concrete. So on the 22nd of March 1940, at Lahore, when the Muslim League was meeting in its annual session, Muhammad Ali Jinnah makes this marathon speech, which I think is the foundational speech on which the campaign for Pakistan was based, where he says that there is nothing common between Hindus and Muslims. We don't interdine, we don't marry, we have nothing in common. The heroes of one are the villains of the other. So to keep these two nations in one state is inviting, something like a civil war. So the future of India is best served by partitioning India so that there is a Hindu India and there is a Hindu Pakistan or whatever you want to call it, Muslim Pakistan. On the 23rd and 24th, then the Lahore resolution is presented, in which the resolution, by the way, was presented by Qazi Fazlul Haq, who was a Bengali. The Bengal story, in order to be understood, there are certain things I would like to do. There are so complications, but do give me a chance to put this in. Before we come to the 1935 Act and the elections, in 1930, Allama Iqbal is invited to Allahabad, now called where he makes the famous statement that in northwestern India, I see the future of Muslims in a separate state and so on. When he made this speech, the immediate reaction was like in that hall, they didn't even have the quorum, 75 persons needed to pass it. So they had to wait the whole day until the Muslims in the town closed their shops and were free, and they brought them there to have the resolution passed. So it's not a resolution which at that time sort of changed Muslim attitudes and all. It was even not noticed generally. It is the British who reacted to it. And I've quoted one Englishman saying that, is Iqbal preaching pan-Islamism? And then Iqbal has written a reply which was published in the Times of London saying that, no, how can Muslims ever think of being disloyal to the British? Actually, British rule in India is kept together by over-representation of Muslims in the armed forces and in the police. So he says, no, this is not my idea at all. Rather, we were thinking of a frontline state from where all the invasions to India have taken place, so that when the British Empire is attacked, the first state or to face it is the state where the Muslims are in the majority. So I would say he recanted from what he had earlier said. But 1933, then I think, is the man you have to keep in mind, and that is Chaudhry Rahmat Ali. Chaudhry Rahmat Ali belonged to some part of Hoshiarpur, so it's a Punjabi story. Why I'm saying this? Because partition of Bengal and partition of Punjab are very different things. How they came together is what I'm trying to explain. So in 1933, Now or Never is published at Cambridge, in which the name Pakistan is coined, Punjab, Afghanistan, A for Kashmir, and Istan for Sindh and Balochistan. Now, in both these schemes, the Bengalis are not included. Not only that the Bengalis are not included, most Muslims of the subcontinent are not part of it. In Iqbal's scheme, only 22% were counted, and in that of Chaudhry Rahmat Ali, it becomes 25 if you include Kashmir as well, because Iqbal didn't mention Kashmir in that. There is no area mentioned. So it was a state of only 25% of the Muslims of India. So the question is, how do the partition of Bengal and these connect? This is the main question. I would say that 1940, when the Lahore Resolution was passed, then on the 25th of March, when all the sessions were over, there is a press conference of Jinnah, where he says that the Lahore Resolution is about the division of India. I know there are some people very influential who say that Jinnah never wanted the partition and Nehru imposed it on him. And they have been able to get away with murder in academia by excluding all the speeches and statements and messages of Jinnah dated 22nd March 1940 until Pakistan came into being. So it's a book in which the spokesman, what he spoke, is grandly omitted, and one gets away with the thesis which has no substantive base to argue. But maybe that's how things happen, which are academia has its own, dark side, should we call it, or what should we say? Anyhow, no more, because I've brought all the evidence in. Anyhow, so 1940 onwards, then Jinnah Sahib, morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you find him, he's reiterating that we want the partition of India. Hindus and Muslims can never be part of one nation and be a cohesive, coherent nation which can live in peace. And when Jinnah Sahib and the Muslim League made this statement, 1 week later, in Punjab, Sir Sundar Singh Majithia, who was the head of the Sikh Nationalist Party, he came out and said that if the Muslim League does not consider India its homeland and they want a separate state for Muslims, then we will ensure that those parts of the Punjab which were not Muslim majority are not placed in such a state, Pakistan. So people want to know when was this demand for the partition of Punjab put on record. I would say 1 week after the Muslim League had passed the resolution. In 1941, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, the founder of the or leader of the Hindu Mahasabha, I'm in my future, the next book which is coming on is the partitions of India, Punjab and Bengal, who did what and why. There I've been looking at Mukherjee's statements, and so in 1941 he's on record saying that those Bengali Muslims who want to have a Pakistan, they should all leave Bengal and go to Pakistan. So already you find in Bengal also such a position being taken. In 1941, before we move further, at Kanpur, Jinnah Sahib is confronted by the Muslims of that town or city, and they say, what will happen to us? Because the Lahore resolution demands Pakistan in those areas in which Muslims are in the majority. What will happen to us? And Jinnah Sahib gives a very curt reply saying that I will have 2 crore 20 million Muslims go experience martyrdom and get smashed. These are his words, by the way. In order to liberate 7 crore from the rule of Hindu Congress, something like this. And so the incongruity of creating separate states and the fact that the Muslims are spread all over India, you have to recognize already when this demand was made. What the Muslim League had proposed then was what is known as the hostage theory. That while there will be Muslims in India, there will be Hindus and Sikhs in Pakistan. So if the Muslims of India are hurt, we will put the Hindus under pressure. You know, that sort of medieval way of, doing politics. This is all on record in any case. So 1940s is this period where, and then I've quoted Lilith Go saying, Jinnah saying, until now it was Mr. Gandhi, Mr. Gandhi, Mr. Gandhi, but now they are turning towards me. His own words. And then Viceroy Lilith Go says that I had a personal interest in promoting Mr. Jinnah, because had Jinnah and the Congress joined hands, maybe we could not have held on to India. So both parties admit their hand in glove, whatever you want to call, of relationship. So I don't see why this should be mystified. The Muslim League by that time had become the darling of the British, rightly so, because they needed soldiers. And the Punjab Unionist parties, which used to recruit soldiers by that, was limited to Punjab. The Muslim League was helping the British from all over India in getting Muslims recruited. By the way, the Hindu Mahasabha was doing the same. Savarkar is on record telling the Viceroy on October the 10th, I think, that look, we will help you recruit Hindus into the army because there is an over-representation of Muslims in the Indian army. So the Akali Dal, by the way, since I'm sitting among Sardars, let me put this on record. The Akali Dal also went to the British and said, we will help you recruit soldiers. So the only political party which did not support the war effort was the Indian National Congress, but they commit a double blunder. The double blunder is that in 1942, because of pressure from Subhash Chandra Bose, who was then first in Germany and then in later on in Japan, he had given the call for an armed revolution. And in parts of Bengal and parts of Bihar, there were attacks on the British. Viceroy Wavell is on record in his book saying that these things were happening. So, the question is, why did the Indian National Congress start the Quit India movement? One was that already a sort of armed resistance was taking place, and the Congress did not want to be alienated from it. Second, they wanted that to lead this because, after all, most people were with the Indian National Congress. So they gave the call for the Quit India movement on the night of the 8th, 9th August 1942. But the British reaction is a very effective one, very merciless one, and they arrest the Congress leaders, send them all to jail, and those who resist armed revolution and so on, they are publicly whipped, hanged, and I think many were sent to the Andaman Islands. So the Quit India movement was crushed. By the way, one question, I don't think, sometimes I want to believe in the Hindu theory of rebirth, because there is one book I want to write, but I know I can't, and that is, how could the British rule India with only 1,100 deputy commissioners and only 55,000 white British troops? The rest of the people doing all this to our own people were us, Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs. So that's the study of the colonial state. The Afghans have never let anyone come and occupy their land. Huh? We are a people who are very vulnerable, amenable to having invaders and joining ranks with them and so on. But this is interesting. I've been baffled all along. I can understand Mahatma Gandhi's ways of doing it and Bhagat Singh trying his way and others. But all of them were cornered. And how could we do it except that we all were taking part in it? So one reason I say this is because I want someone to write such a book. I don't think I have the time now to do that sort of research to get the facts together. There must be an explanation. Of course, we have our hypotheses why this is so. Religion is one. The caste divisions are another. The ethnic questions, all these language questions, all these are things which can be used one against the other. And so, anyhow, 1942, the Quit India movement starts, and they're all dispatched to prison. Here, I would like to now, I think I've given all the background. What is the difference between Bengal and Punjab? If you permit me. Huh? I would say, first of all, Bengal and Punjab have to be looked at in terms of the class structure. Bengal was landlord and mostly the educated class, Calcutta and all upper caste Hindus. The peasantry was Muslim, mostly poor. Some people in East Bengal, like the Nawab of Dhaka and so on, were there. That's all. In Punjab, the landlords were Muslims, big, small, medium size, and all. The peasantry was Muslim as well as Sikh. But the business class in Punjab was Hindu, Khatri, and Arora. And this could be also Sikhs. Education wise, both in Bengal and in Punjab, one can say throughout India, the Hindus were more advanced. So, in economic, financial terms, job opportunities, there was this class difference. As I said, in 1905, there was a partition of Bengal and then annulled in 1911. And some people trace the partition of Bengal to that date. But I think that is wrong because those people who demanded the partition of Bengal in 1946 were the ones who were opposed to the partition of Bengal in 1905. So you have to look at who did what and why. So 1942, now we come to, so this is the basic difference between Punjab and Bengal. Now, the second thing to note is, after 1857, the British had blacklisted Bengalis and some parts of Bihar from joining the fighting units of the army. They could be at most doctors, maybe engineers, but not in the fighting forces. Whereas the Punjab was overrepresented. Of the 2.5 million, I think more than a million were Punjabis. The Sikhs were overrepresented, 16% or plus, when their percentage was 13.2%. Then the Muslims were overrepresented, but some parts of Punjab, northwestern parts of Punjab, and the Hindus of Haryana, the Jats, were also part of that army. So, if you want to look at people who were trained to kill, who had the experience of conducting, violence and so on, you would find them in Punjab, not in Bengal. This is one factor. Then now, fast, we go fast forward. 1945, as I said, the Congress and all until then were in jail. In 1945 June, they are released. There is a Shimla conference, which is a failure because Jinnah doesn't let the Congress party nominate any Muslim to be part of the interim government, which they will wanted to. So therefore, that's a failure. Then they send the cabinet mission plan. A lot is made of the cabinet mission plan. I wish we had time to go through it. I think this is also great distortion done by people. Because when the cabinet mission plan was announced on the 16th of May, the first statement is by the Muslim League that it rejects Pakistan. So we cannot accept it. So how do you say that the Muslim League accepted it? It's all on record. And the Congress position was that the way the cabinet mission plan was framed, the center had no effective powers. Everything was given to the provinces. How can you rule a government of the size of India with its complexities without an effective center? And then what the British had done was that they had grouped the provinces into three, A, B, and C. A were Hindu majority provinces, B were Muslim majority provinces of northwestern frontier, northwestern India. As soon as this scheme was announced, the Sikhs of Punjab said we have been placed in this group B against our wishes, so we don't accept it. And the northwest frontier, Khudai ke khidmatkar, overwhelmingly 96% Muslims, they also rejected it. How can you place us in group B against our wishes? So this is one. And group C was Bengal. The third was that the princely states surrendered only their foreign affairs and defense, and they could retain their autonomy, which they enjoyed under the British. And most of Maharajas, not all, were very good at hunting and haram building and so on. So how could the Indian National Congress, which was a nationalist party and had over the years developed constitutional instruments about human rights and the right to vote and all, accept such a situation? So I would say that why the cabinet mission plan was rejected and in what form needs to be highlighted. Jinnah, on the 25th of June, after first having condemned it, even have said that Muslims are 5 times better fighters than Hindus, and unless Pakistan is granted to us, we will, shake India to an extent nobody will be able to handle it. So, having said all this, suddenly on the 6th of June, speaking to the Council Muslim League, he said, "Look, Pakistan remains our irrevocable goal, but we may not get it tomorrow. But the 3 groups had a right to leave the union every 10 years as a group or as provinces. Now you tell me, can you form a state which from its day one has a constitution which allows its parts to disintegrate You live in a country where the civil war was fought on this issue, isn't it? Nobody is willing to accept such a psychological state where you create a state which can be dissolved because of this sort of right given to the parts of it. Huh? So this people don't understand, but as a political scientist, I know that the cabinet mission plan was not presenting a federation, a union. It was presenting some sort of quasi confederation, and that in itself was problematic. And a government without effective powers is no government. So on the 25th of June, Muslim League says we accept the cabinet mission plan, but and we will join the interim government. We will not join the Constituent Assembly to frame a constitution for India. So once again, to say that the Muslim League and Jinnah accepted the cabinet mission plan, if true, is only half true. They said we are not going to the Constituent Assembly to frame a constitution for India as long as the three groups have not worked out their constitution, allowing them the right to secede every 10 years. The Congress said that we will not join the interim government, but we will go to the Constituent Assembly to frame a constitution for India. So the Congress also only rejected a part of it. But Lord Wavell was insistent that an interim government should be formed, and the British were encouraging him to do that. So he gave a call to Nehru after consulting the governors to form the interim government, and the instructions were make all efforts to bring the Muslim League in. When he gave this order, Mr. Jinnah, on the 29th of July, gave the call for direct action. Now, the funny thing is, or the intriguing thing I would say is, the direct action call was given against whom? It must have been against the British who formed the interim government. Okay? But this direct action was to take place in Calcutta. And in Calcutta, the government was under the Muslim League. Sohrawardy was the chief minister. Please take note of these facts because once I'm gone, nobody will give you this in such great details. But you give a direct action call, fine. Against whom? It's against the British, huh? But where is this call to be taken up? In Bengal, which was with the Muslim League government, with Sohrawardy as the chief minister. And Sohrawardy declares a holiday. And so, when direct action took place on the 16th of August 1946, for 2 days, it was the Muslim League Gundas who had the upper hand, and they looted, killed Hindus, mostly in the rundown areas. Then there was a backlash, and in the next 2-3 days, the Hindus and taxi drivers, 6-7 taxi drivers, they took part in it. They attacked the Muslims, and at the end of the day, anywhere between 10,000 people were killed. And Jinnah was never accused of inciting violence, and that's very strange to me because in the past they would arrest Gandhi and Bose and anybody just because they wanted to go out and protest. And here is a call for direct action, and the direct action should be against British rule, who formed the interim government. Instead, they go to Calcutta, ruled by the Muslim League, and there they attack the Hindu population, and in return they are attacked. And so that's the spiral of communalism getting out of hand. Then it's Noakhali where Hindus are targeted. Some say 500, some say 5,000 were killed. Then Muslims are killed in Bihar, one-sidedly 5 to 7,000. In Bombay, there is a struggle first 2 days, and then uh, Muslims are on the lesser numbers, Pindi Bazaar and all that was. Then this moves to Haripur Hazara in December 1946, where one-sidedly the Sikhs and Hindus were killed in a very large numbers. Many seek refuge in Rawalpindi in Punjab and then move forward to the princely states. Uh, in Punjab, there was a coalition government formed by Sir Khizar Hayat Tiwana, a thorough gentleman, one of the biggest landlords, pro-British no doubt, but who believed in the old Punjabi wisdom of all communities staying together. He was the chief minister and he was supported by the Congress party and the Sikh Panthik parties. And they had a solid majority in the Punjab Assembly. Jinnah Sahib then gives direct action in Punjab. And on the 24th of January, Chief Minister Tiwana orders police raids on the headquarters of the Muslim League and the RSS. Allegedly, the reports were that they were keeping arms in these places. And the Muslim League leaders are arrested for the first time in their lives. The Muslim League had never even for half a second ever gone out and protested against the British. Now also they were not protesting against the British, but an elected coalition government led by Sir Khizar Hayat Tiwana. And during this period, although it was peaceful, but as the time uh, uh, developed every day and more arrests were made, it became more communal. It became even more violent. Violence started taking place, and the slogans which were shouted in the streets of Punjab. If you have the permission, I could repeat them here. They are in Punjabi. Khizar Dalla Hai Hai. Khizar Kutta Apni Maan Al Sutta. This is the Chief Minister of Punjab. चलो भी चलो एक चीज मिलेगी क्या भी क्या खिजर की बेटी वाह भाई वाह. But I must say that Khizar during this direct action did not order police action. So no police firing took place from the 24th of January till the 26th of February when this was called off. The people arrested were released, and but Khizar decided to resign. Why did he resign? He resigned because on the 20th of February 1947, the British Prime Minister Italy declared that we will hand over power to Indians by June 1948. So Khizar Tiwana, first of all, the abuse against him must have affected his nerves. Then he realized that there was no future for the loyalists. The future will be decided by the Congress and the Muslim League and the British. They are going to decide the future of India. So he resigns. On the 3rd of March, Master Tara Singh comes out from the Lahore Assembly and says, Pakistan Murdabad, we will not let Pakistan come into being. And on the 4th, the Hindu and Sikh students in the hostel of the DAV College Lahore, they come out to protest. And on the first day, the police fires on them. And about 6-7 are killed. Later on, in different parts of Lahore, except the civil lines and where the upper classes live, if you read Kushwant Singh, he says that while we were watching Lahore being burnt, in our clubs, the whiskey was going on the way we always do. So remember, the partition, the way it impacted on people also has a class sort of. Anyhow, the 4th of March is when the Punjab, the title of my book is The Punjab Bloodied, Partitioned and Cleansed. But March 1947 is when the Punjab is bloodied. First in Lahore, then by the evening of the 4th, people who worked in Lahore every day, they would come to the Mughalpura railway workshops, workers. When they went back to Amritsar, they brought the story of Lahore that it was up in fire. And so Hall Bazaar in Amritsar becomes the venue of the next clash between Sikhs and Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus on one side and Muslims. So Amritsar is engulfed by this. On the 5th, uh, Multan is also attacked, taken off by this uh, communal conflicts. And I would like to mention one incident which I think is very important to see how this thing was so greatly inhuman. There was a Hindu gentleman called Sept Kalyan Das, a businessman. He was such a gentle, good person that, and this has been told to me by Muslims of Multan, that whenever there was a dispute, people would take their disputes to him. Hindus, Muslim dispute, Hindus disputes, Muslim disputes. And Sheikh Kalyan Das was respected by all communities. But once the Multan thing started, the first uh, protest march which was taken out on the 5th, it was attacked, and the first person to die was Nanak Singh, a Sikh. And then later on, uh, Sheikh Kalyan Das was attacked by Muslim League touts, police touts, and all. And they killed him and his wife and his 3 daughters and 1 son. And this has been narrated to me by Muslims who were always in favor of a united India, who were members of the Majlis-e-Ahrar or the Khalsa party, who never accepted that the division of India is good for Islam or for Muslims. So their evidence is there, and I've given the picture of like uh, Amanullah, who gave me the story. He said, when we reached Sheikh Kalyan Das's house, we were too late to save his life. But when we entered in, the president of the Punjab Congress, Dr. Saifuddin, he was undressing. This Muslim League Gumras wanted to kill him also. And he was saying, I am a Muslim. Because he said, you take off your, trousers, we want to make sure that you are a Muslim. And they say we got just in time to save his life. So this is how the Punjab was bloodied. On the 5th, at the other end of Punjab, rioting started. On the 5th and 6th, the rioting was even-handed. On the evening of the 6th, for some reason, thousands of people moved into the villages, surrounded villages which were essentially Sikh villages. And from the 6th of March till the 12th of March, there was no intervention from the government. And there was a massacre of Sikhs. The Sikhs claimed 10,000 killed. The British sources give 3,800 killed. I myself have worked there collecting evidence. I would say the truth would always be between 5 to 7,000. And this was done in the most savage, brutish manners. Later on, the revenge against Muslims was repeated on a grander scale in East Punjab. So it's not that it was started by Muslim League and because this was an area where all the people who have been demobilized by after the Second World War, they had brought their arms and they knew how to kill. They were all involved in this. I've given the reports. So the Punjab was bloodied in March 1947. Then Mountbatten comes and he takes over on the 24th of March. And after talking to all the leaders, he comes to the conclusion that India has to be partitioned. The parties involved are not agreeing. Jinnah wanted the whole of Punjab and Bengal, but wanted India partition between Hindus and Muslims. And I would like to put on record, yes, at time I have overstepped, but please give me this opportunity. हाँ जी, either दिन पता नहीं दोबारा आए या ना आए, हाँ जी, हाँ जी. Because now, you see, so where was I? Mountbatten decides to comes to the conclusion that India will have to be partitioned. And he then, I have argued, was given two briefs, one overt and one covert. The overt was that we have to transfer power to Indians by June 1948, and the covert was that India, divided or partitioned, must remain in the Commonwealth. This is not written anywhere, but when I went through the speeches and Mountbatten's maneuvering of his talks with Gandhi, with Nehru and Jinnah, I've shown on the conversation or the discussion, the dialogue which took place. So Mountbatten comes and we say the Punjab bloody partition. That's when the process of partitioning India starts taking place. In 1946, in Bengal, the Muslim League, Khwaja Nazmuddin and these people started arguing that we want Bengal to be partitioned and given to India. But part of the Muslim League leadership, which were rebels against Jinnah, Soharwardi and others, they joined ranks with the brother of Subhash Chandra Bose. What is his name, yeah? He know, anyhow. With him and Shankar Roy of the Congress. These three agreed, okay, we will keep Bengal united. Now, the thing is, Mr. Jinnah wanted India partition because he said the Muslim minority cannot live with Hindus. We have nothing in common. And we are in these two parts, we are in a majority. In 1944, Lord Greville had released Gandhiji to go and talk to Jinnah so that they could sort out that. And Jinnah and Gandhi's talks are well known. They are all, in the end, Gandhi offered him that at the end of the day we can have, if you want Pakistan, we can grant Pakistan, but there would be a plebiscite in those areas where you want Pakistan, so that we know what is the will of the people. Jinnah said yes, plebiscite, yes, but only Muslims will vote. Now, I think that's the most unreasonable and illogical position. Let's say, if on the demand for Pakistan a plebiscite had taken place, it would never be granted because the Hindus and Sikhs will not vote for the partition. So how can you force people to create your own state but not give them the chance to decide them if they want to live with you or not? And I have noted that Greville, who was very sympathetic to Jinnah, writing that Jinnah overplayed his hands because ultimately he got the same Punjab and Bengal which was being offered to him by Gandhi. So if people want to know now who is responsible not only for the partition but for the violence which took place at the time of partition, I have no doubt it is Jinnah Sahib, and of course the British who granted him all that. So, to cut a very strong note, story short, in 1930 there was no Bengal part of Pakistan. In 33, no question of it. It's only in 1946 that the Muslim League section led by Khwaja Nazmuddin wants that Bengal partition ho or it should be part of Pakistan. I think the details about what happened are too many. I've given you the whole background and now we can have questions.
just for everyone's benefit, I think you are providing a counter narrative. You mentioned the academic side,
Yeah.
which comes largely from Isha Jalal, that Jinnah, who was using the the demand for Pakistan as a bargaining chip for separate constituencies, and it was not until 1946 when Nehru, makes a speech at the Indian National Congress convention,
10th of July.
saying that the Congress will not be beholden to the former promises they made. They can renege on those promises.
He didn't say that, but anyhow.
That's the interpretation. Yeah. And that's when Jinnah basically, decided to go beyond Pakistan being a bargaining chip.
Right.
But I think now I'm trying to compare your perspective with her perspective.
Yeah.
In her perspective, Gandhi and Nehru are just as communal as Jinnah.
Okay.
But in your perspective, I haven't seen Gandhi and Nehru being communal. And I question that, because once the partition happens, then the Sikh and the Muslim experience in India testifies to Nehru being communal, because you have India being reorganized along linguistic lines. The only languages not given statehood are Sindhi, Punjabi, and Urdu. Okay, right. And there are many. We don't have time to go over this.
No. But I think
that's the main difference between your perspective and Jalal's perspective.
First of all, are these perspectives our own choices, or the evidence is supported by one or the other? You are yourself a scholar. An opinion is one thing and evidence is another thing. So saying this is her perspective and this is my perspective is as if these are two opinions. I'm saying whose evidence is substantiated by the claims being made. Do you have an opinion on that?
No, I'm not a scholar of partition, so I can't make that.
So because that makes it very difficult then. People who want me to respond to this must have a look at what she has done and what I have done, and then see which is plausible. Because after all scholarship is an effort to find the truth. And let me now, since you say it, and makes me very angry really, because not with you, sir, you've been very kind. I'm just saying I don't understand people how they can argue anymore, because the book of Aisha Jalal is The Sole Spokesman, Jinnah, The Demand for Pakistan and Partition. Okay. I have said in her book, in which she argues like this, if you can show me one speech, one statement, one message of Jinnah, and they are ad infinitum, there are so many, you have to make a selection, even remotely, even obliquely suggesting that we want a power sharing deal within a united India, then my thesis collapses. What she has done is that all that is missing in her book. Jinnah is not quoted, Jinnah is not referred, Jinnah is not even paraphrased anywhere saying this. On the contrary, sir, I have overdone by giving for every year the recurring speeches saying that we want partition, and on several occasions, Mr. Jinnah says that those who say that I'm using the partition demand as a bargaining chip, they are Congress propagandists. So shame on the person who says this, because Jinnah himself is condemning those who are saying that I'm using this as a bargaining chip. Admitting all this, you get a PhD passed. Those merits are not academic merits, I'm sorry to say. So said, here, sir, before you, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਹੋ ਨਾ।
So what do you say about his
Huh?
second narrative?
Huh?
What do you say about his second narrative?
Yeah, I'll come to that. Let me know. First of all, I would say कि ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੋਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਤੇ ਬਿਠਾ ਦਿਓ, both of us, and let's have a discussion and let there be a jury. This invitation stands here. Okay. The second thing, what about Jinnah being, Nehru being a communalist?
And Gandhi.
And Gandhi. When Gandhi was killed by Hindus for, just a moment, that's not communalism. That's not communalism when you say that the Muslims are parting. Those who want to live in India should be left in peace and they should not be attacked. I have the speech with me, and I have the references made by the 3 chief ministers of Punjab, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and Mr. Jinnah, saying that Gandhiji's greatness was that he opposed the whole idea of Pakistan, but then he gave up his life to defend the rights of Muslims to live in peace in India, and that he made even the Indian government give Pakistan 55 crore due to Pakistan. So if anybody has a grievance against Gandhi ji, it is the Hindus of Punjab who say that he went to Bengal. You know, how come in 1945 Gandhi was not in Delhi taking part in the celebrations? He was sitting in Calcutta along with Sohrawardi among Muslims, because a major attack was going to take place to drive out and kill all Muslims. And because of his presence, no bloodshed took place. Now, if that is communalism, then I don't know how do we give meanings to words. To accuse Gandhi ji of communalism, I think is indefensible. I'm being very polite. And about Jawaharlal Nehru, well, already the problem was that the partition of India had taken place, and the Sikhs wanted a Punjabi-speaking Suba. Okay, but there was Haryana. That's why I took it up in the beginning. Haryana was not Punjabi-speaking; they were all Hindi-speaking. So that was the problem. So if you want the Punjabi Suba, then you had to break up that Punjab, and Nehru did not want to break up that Punjab. I think that was his way of looking at it. And one thing more, when the partition took place, attacks on Muslims took place everywhere in India. There was a conspiracy in which Govalkar was involved. He had come all the way to UP to incite Hindus to attack Muslims, and it was discovered and defeated. Sardar Patel was also involved in crushing some of these attempts to drive out Muslims. Nehru prevented it. In 1947, there were only 9.8% Muslims in India. Today, they are 14.2 plus some say 15%. Now, that's not the signs to me of a communalist. And I think if Punjab wanted Punjabi language, they had to keep the Punjabi Hindus on board. But apart from that, the Haryana people were not willing to be part of such a Punjab.
That wasn't the logic presented by Nehru. The logic was that Punjabi is same as Hindi.
Sorry?
Punjabi and Hindi are the same. That was the logic.
Chalo,
Right? That's why so
that might be also the logic, but that doesn't prove him to be a communalist. I don't think so.
Yeah. How can language issue be translated into a communal issue?
Speak louder.
I'm just trying to counter Rasa. How can the language issue be translated into a communal issue?
No, I don't understand that either.
Yeah. So
But
language
anyhow,
is common among all Punjabis, whether they are Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, or Christians.
that doesn't make it
It is
communalist.
not a communal issue. It is an issue of governance and reorganization of newly forming states within a newly independent India. It's not a communal issue, sir.
Anyhow, let me.
Okay, so I think we should. This is a longer discussion. I disagree, but it's a longer discussion. So we will go to some questions, please.
Professor Ahmed, Thank you very much for being so honest and upfront. It's rare.
अपना नाम भी बताएं. What's
मेरा
your
नाम
name?
अजीत भारती है, मैं चंदर का दोस्त.
हाँ.
मैं इस फील्ड में नहीं हूँ. कैंसर रिसर्च.
उसी बोले भैया.
मैं इस फील्ड में नहीं हूँ, but I have started taking a lot of interest in
Yeah.
what is going on, what was going on, what is going on in India. So one of the questions that comes in mind right now, I was visiting India and I frequently visit there, is so we divided the country and you have looked into the division of the country very closely. Do you see any parallel right now, somehow Indian subcontinent, I'm not talking about Pakistan, is passing through the similar phase what it was pre-47? You know, that is one thing that the polarization that is going on.
Yeah.
And being a Hindu, practicing Hindu, I realized that after 47, Nehru not only did a disservice to the country by he just declared that India is a secular country, but he didn't practice India as a secular country. He gave us two constitutions. First, one constitution for Kashmir, based on what we all know that. And he also gave the Sharia law, basically. In India, Sharia law is practiced.
I don't think he gave the Sharia law.
No,
I think this is unfair to say. 1931, that is why I mentioned there is a resolution of the Congress Party. Why, let me illustrate why. The Muslims of India had many parties. Muslim League was not the only one. Jamiyat-e-Ulama Hind, which was the main party from 1919, remained loyal to the Indian National Congress. And their position was that in order to keep the Muslims into the Congress and for a united India, we have to assure them that the Muslim family laws will be preserved. So I think this was a gentleman's agreement, but there is on record that one reason why he made Maulana Abul Kalam Azad the education minister was that he should encourage Muslims to take to modern education, and as they modernize, they would demand that they all become part of the same. So it was done in good faith.
Yes, I agree with you on that, but they both failed on that, right? The Muslims in India are most uneducated, like they are suffering on that account for many regions. And I grew up in a small village where we live in peace, basically.
Well, you know, so many people are saying, wasn't Jinnah right then that in a united India Muslims will be persecuted? So this question I was posed in Pakistan everywhere, and I said, well, look, first of all, Jinnah was willing to sacrifice and have smashed 2 crore Muslims to get Pakistan. So for him, it's not a big issue if this is true. Second, if Pakistan was created to save Islam and Muslims from the misrule or abuse of rule by Hindus, so why don't we open borders and let all persecuted Muslims come and seek refuge in Pakistan? Not just as Israel uses the law of return to allow Jews to come back, because Israel was created for the Jews. So why can't this be done for Pakistan? And then you find they keep quiet. Because accusing India, and it may be true now, but I would say that Pakistan's own role in encouraging the Hindu right to come into power has to be taken into account. What about the Kashmir involvement of Pakistan, where the JKLF campaign was for something like a secular Kashmir, and the Lashkar-e-Taiba and Harkatul Mujahideen, and they all brought that Kashmir banega Pakistan. So that terrorism, the Hindu Pandits being thrown out of India, out of Kashmir. Then what about the terrorist attacks in Bombay and in Delhi?
That's what I'm
saying. The Hindu reaction is now taking place.
Yes, absolutely. That's what
I'm saying that this is a continuation of the ideology, that two nation theory, that if you are not part of my faith, that you are not part of me. Because this logic ultimately leaves everybody all go. Because in Pakistan, where Hindus and Sikhs are all gone now, we have turned this logic inwards. So Shia Sunni problems, Qadianis we have declared non-Muslims. Every day you find the ulama condemning each other, in the worst of languages. I'm sure if Khalistan comes into being, it will be another fundamentalist state because you have all the Nirankaris and so on, and we know when a state is founded on a religion, it ipso facto becomes oppressive. Initially, all stages can be majoritarian, but democracy is there, open discussion, multi-political, multi-party system, all these are, and civil society are there to ensure that this doesn't happen. But if ideologically the state is based on a religion, it automatically then persecutes those who don't fit into that. So I'm against the whole notion of any state being founded on a religion.
Can I have a comment? Just comment. We are at the Harvard campus. Some of us are scientists here. Done research 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, including me, 37 years. Delhi University, Emory, Harvard, Cornell. We inside out, we know. We are well educated. 99.9, our DNA is same. Inside. Outside, I look more means from Pakistan, but unfortunately I'm from Delhi. Yes, believe me, because when I was at MD University in Atlanta, I used to have beard. The Muslims say other words. Salam alaikum. No, I'm just saying. My monastic, I used to go in Gurdwara also because there was no Gurdwara at that time in 86 to 94. But I used to go over there. They said, Sasrikal ji, Sasrikal. Now I said Dhanankar also. You mentioned Dhanankaris. So,
Point kya aapka?
my point is, if we have only 4 blood group, we all are from South Asia or Indian subcontinent, we are still struggling. What Hindu did, what Sikh did, what Muslim did, make a common sense. Really, when we see each other, we cannot find out who is Muslim, who is Christian, who is Sikh, and who is Hindu. So it is a very small lifespan, 100 years, 1200 months, 36,000 days only. So let us live every day, one at a time. And I'm very delighted. Like I meet you because I missed last time when you came. I was in India, but I'm long story short. So
about Nehru's communalism, I want to say something.
Yes. I'm sorry I took a little longer time.
Minister of India, they wanted to, or they restored the Somnath temple, and they wanted President Rajendra Prasad to go there to do the opening ceremony. And Nehru is on record saying that I don't advise you to go because India is for all Indians and not just for Hindus. So I don't understand where will you find a more enlightened ruler than Nehru. Sayyid Sajjad Zahir, who was the Secretary General of the Communist Party of Pakistan, when it was banned, he was ordered to leave Pakistan. It's Nehru who allowed him to come back. I find Nehru actually one of the most humane human beings I've read and I've understood. He did not make any major errors. Yes, like all human beings, you make some judgments. Some are sound, some are not. In our own lives, this is what they do. But to accuse him of being communalist, I think is grossly unfair.
I have a question to this actually. In 1956, when Chaudhry Muhammad Ali was the Prime Minister in Pakistan, he sent an invitation, let us settle this Kashmir issue. And what was, the answer of Nehru at that time? You might know, you have gone through all these newspapers. He said that I cannot talk to a Babu, and he didn't continue.
I cannot talk to
Babu, like a clerk, because Chaudhry Muhammad Ali, he was an ICS officer, and he became the Prime Minister. So it depicts, there are so many other incidents also.
Personal things
No,
like
it was not a personal. It was sent a message from the Pakistan. Let us settle this Kashmir issue. He was a very nice guy, actually. Very clear background.
by the way, let me now that you
Therefore, he was in
let me just a minute, yaar. Mainu ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਦਿਓ,
For
ਹਾਂ?
instance,
ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਦਿਓ, yes. Let me, sir, respond to you. First of all, this Kashmir issue, let me give a background to it because you referred to Chaudhry Muhammad Ali. And I say, go back, sir, home and read The Emergence of Pakistan, his book. I can even give you the page.
I
It's
have that.
237 or something. Huh? He says that, first of all, on the 1st of November 1947, Mountbatten, as Governor General of India, came to Lahore because the partition committees were still meeting. And he proposed that we have a plebiscite in Hyderabad, Junagadh, and Kashmir. It is Mr. Jinnah who rejected it. One. Chaudhry Muhammad Ali, in his book Emergence of Pakistan, writes that Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan and I were in Delhi during this December 1947 because, as I said, the partition thing was still on. And he says that the Kashmir and Junagadh issue came up. And Sardar Patel, who was the Home Minister, he said he was a bit irritated. He said, "Why do you keep talking about Junagadh? Let us settle Kashmir and Hyderabad. You keep Kashmir and we keep Hyderabad." That's Chaudhry Rahmat Ali in Emergence of Pakistan. Then K.H. Khurshid. K.H. Khurshid was Muhammad Ali Jinnah's private secretary from 1944 to September 1947. And he has written a book, My Memories of Jinnah, published by Oxford University Press, Karachi, 1991. You can check there also. He says that I went to some people who were very close to Jinnah. And he said that Chaudhry Muhammad Ali told me that on the 22nd of December, he got a message from India that you keep Kashmir and we keep Hyderabad. He says, I took this message to Mr. Jinnah. Mr. Jinnah did not seem to be interested. Jinnah, the clever tactician, it seems, was playing for some higher stakes on the princely states, but obviously he did not succeed. So the Kashmir issue, by the way, is also because of Jinnah's arrogance. He lost a chance of settling it peacefully. So let's have all this. Since you referred to Chaudhry Muhammad Ali, please go and check this and let me know if there is a problem with what I have stated here.
No, but I was concerned about that
Najib?
reply from your.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so my question is, and I apologize for not knowing the Indian history better, but you know they teach it after you have the end of Viceroy, your mind shuts off. Not as a student of history, but as you were saying, I was trying to take notes.
Please speak a bit louder.
As you were talking, I was trying to take notes, and thank you so very
Yeah.
much. This was like far more informative than all my 7-8 years of elementary school history.
That's nice to hear
I
that.
have a question. I didn't understand one point. You said that there was an interim government. So
Yeah.
say about like 1940, the year prior to when the
That's correct.
handoff happened. In the interim government, who was in power in the various regions? Was it the British making the decisions, or were they elected or quasi-elected officials from the Indian?
Excellent question.
Because I want to find out ultimately when there was a breakdown in security in these regions and the riots were happening, who did or did not call, the police or the army to stop the riots?
I get the point. First of all, it was still the 1935 Act, India Act, okay, which applied. And according to that, all executive powers were vested in the Governor General. And through him, the head of all provinces was the governor. Okay? So Article 93 gave the governors the powers to dismiss a government if they thought that the law and order situation was not all right, or that a party which was in power didn't have the majority. So the 1935 Act gave all real powers to the British administration. The bureaucracy was the police, but chief ministers who came to power uh, always had to consult the governor before they made their decisions.
Chief ministers
What
these,
locals?
were they
Yeah. Yeah, in 37 they were elected for the first time, and then again in 1945. Okay. Now the interim government was formed, I think, sometimes in August or September 1946, and Jawaharlal Nehru was invited to form the government, and the instruction was that you have to make all efforts to bring the Muslim League. The Muslim League agreed in October 1946. This is after the Calcutta Rising. Okay. Now the Muslim League first of all created problems. It said we will join only if we have 50-50% of representation. Whereas the Muslim percentage of the total population of India at that time was 24.9%. Okay. So the Congress agreed. The second thing the Muslim League then demanded was that only the Muslim League would be entitled to appoint a Muslim to the interim government. This again was very difficult for the Congress to accept, which had for years fought on a platform for all Indians. They had spent best part of their lives in jail fighting for a united India and for Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs all together. But they accepted that as well because they wanted to nominate Maulana Abul Kalam Azad or Dr. Zakir Hussain. Jinnah overruled that. So only Muslims, 5 Muslim leaguers were appointed. What did Jinnah did in addition to that? He even appointed a Dalit, Joginder Nath Mandal, as the law minister, whereas according to the Muslim League's charter, only a Muslim could be a member of the Muslim League. In 1944, when the Gandhi Jinnah talks were taking place and they failed because Jinnah said plebiscite only Muslims would vote, then Gandhiji pleaded with him that please let me address the Council Muslim League, the executive committee, and try to explain my point of view. And Jinnah told him that only a Muslim can appear before the Council Muslim League. And now he is appointing a Dalit only because to counter the Congress at all levels. They all agreed to that. What happened then finally? Where did the break come? Sardar ji hai visra sun lo. From where did the break come? It was on Hickman, sir. It was on after the March riots attacked the Sikhs. Oh no, Congress ne mane. Let me put this on record. In February 1947, the interim government with Finance Minister Nawabzada Liaquat Ali Khan prepares a budget in which he imposes 20-25% duty on trade, business, and so on, saying that black marketing he wants to control, but not a word on land reforms. On land reforms. It is at that point that within the Congress in the interim government, Nehru and some of the leftists wanted to accept even such a hostile budget. But Patel then, Sardar Patel, who is nowadays a favorite of the BJP and all, Patel said, we can't form a government with the Muslim League together. Let's part now. That's when the Congress finally decided they will go for the partition. And the actual date is the 8th of March 1947, after they heard reports from Punjab that in Rawalpindi area, the Sikhs were being surrounded and killed in large numbers. Now, these ministers of the interim government, in my Punjab book you can find this, Raja Ghazanfar Ali Khan and Khwaja Nazmuddin, they came all the way to Punjab to incite people to take part in the direct action. So this was not a government which was actually working as a cabinet. They were there because Babel wanted such a situation. And let me put on record one thing which goes around, even in this film on Gandhi, I think it is misrepresented. During the cabinet mission plan discussions, there were three British ministers and they had a whole body of people, advisors. Haji? So a Major Waite, Wayatt, he was one of them who goes and talks to Gandhiji. What is your position on what should we do? Because the Muslim League is not willing to accept Congress to nominate a Muslim. So he said, do like this. I propose that we let Jinnah form the government for India. He can choose the Congress and Muslim League for, for being ministers or just the Muslim League. And I will ensure that the Congress accepts that. And can you tell me who's the one who did not want this, did not convey this message or something? It's Webel. Webel said that I cannot have Jinnah as Prime Minister because under the 1935 Act, it's the Governor General who has the power to decide the future on behalf of the British government. So he did not, first of all, had this message been communicated to Jinnah. I don't think at that stage he would be even remotely interested in it. He knew Pakistan was going to come into being. So why accept it? So anyhow.
Professor, just one follow-up quick question.
Yeah.
So when the riots were happening in Punjab, when they were happening on the Pakistan side of the border, so this was because, so it's like state terrorism, because if the state administration, because it's the state administration which is allowing, but then the same thing is happening in East Punjab, which is on the other side, because of the Muslims that are down there, then that is also equivalent state terrorism, that whoever the government
Yes, my estimate says that 800,000 Punjabis were killed during this period, of which 300,000 were Hindus and Sikhs killed on our side, and 500,000 were Muslims killed on. I quote November 7th, I think, is the date when Mia Iftikharuddin, who was the rehabilitation minister, he makes a statement that I'm waiting for 200,000 Muslims to come from Patiala. And 2 weeks later, Malik Khuda Baksh, who was a PCS officer traveling in those areas, he then issues a statement that Mia Saab can keep on waiting. Those 200,000 are not coming. So ultimately, more Muslims were killed, but it is the Muslims who started the killing. Then from March till July, the attacks were on the Muslim side. So these are hard facts for all sides to accept. For the Sikhs, it is very difficult to accept that they may have killed more Muslims, but I have given Sikh references to support that. Okay? But for Muslims, they are always blaming that it is the Sikhs who killed Muslims in large numbers. After my book, it's not possible to, in an academic way, maintain such nonsense because everything can be well verified. And 90% of the interviews I did with oral history, you can go and hear it because LUMS, Lahore University of Management Sciences, they have a partition archive. And you can hear all the confessions made by people. What did we do when we were attacking Hindus or Muslims or Sikhs? So everything is now strongly based on evidence. Haji,
वो मेरा सिर्फ कमेंट था. You mentioned Jinnah said to Gandhi, only Muslim. So did he define a Muslim to Gandhi, or has he defined a Muslim? Or
that's very amusing because Jinnah himself was not much of a Muslim. Actually, he didn't know the Kalima properly. This is a fact. But I'm not going into his personal. I'm saying his political role. It's not important कि Muslim कौन है या नहीं है. Even if we decide that this person is a Muslim, there are many we will exclude. Huh? So it's an impossible task. Who is a Muslim is a possible.
Gandhi didn't ask him this question.
Sorry?
Gandhi didn't ask him this question.
I'll give you an example. I hope you will forgive me for this example. You see, Javed Bhai, you know we have the Shia and Sunni sect, isn't it? The Shias, rightly or wrongly, is not the issue. They curse Abu Bakr, Umar, and Usman, saying that they usurped the power. It should have gone to Hazrat Ali. Okay? The Sunnis cannot curse Ali or the family of the Prophet. So I say that the Indian National Congress was a Sunni party because it had Muslims. Abul Kalam Azad, Hussain Ahmad Madni, Abdul Ghaffar Khan, Allah Baksh Somru, these great people supporting them. So they could not have used this religious slogan in this twisted manner. But Jinnah was up, Hinduism wrong for this, wrong for that, Hindus evil. He even says there's a verse, Bagal mein churi ye wo, I mean, not fit for a leader to speak like this, but he did. So, sir, there is no point in saying कि कौन मुसलमान था या नहीं था. Had Gandhi made this कि who is a Muslim, I'm sure Jinnah wouldn't have had any reasonable answer, but he was a lawyer who knew how to avoid such situations.
In Ghazal Party, you mentioned Ghazal Party and Khilafat movement. There were all Sikhs, Muslims, and Hindus in that, and many of them were sent to Andaman Island.
That's right.
And somebody suggested to me that read another book, which is they used to send people to Malta too.
Yeah.
So he has written a book, Asiran in Malta, Prisoners of Malta.
Oh.
So I don't know if you have mentioned those in your book.
Not every book I've read that is sufficient for this book. Sir, I'll have a look at it. Thank you, sir.
And we can have one last question. Yeah.
So in deciding, like we say,
मुझे बोलो यार.
so in deciding like this person is responsible for this, or that person is responsible for this, I'm just curious, before colonization, before
I'm not
47,
able to hear you. I'm hard of hearing. So
sorry.
speak loud.
So before 47,
Yeah.
when there's British around, how do you say so and so is responsible? Did they even have the agency beyond what the British permitted?
Agency, what
It's like say he can say that I wanted partition, or he didn't want partition. But if the British didn't want it, then they could just get rid of Jinnah and put some other guy in there.
It's
So how?
possible to respond. ये agency वाली argument लोग
Not
बहुत
agency, not.
use करते हैं.
No,
What is the issue?
I'm saying like in let's say in Germany, right?
देखो जी बात सुनो. If you read my book, one frustration I get is people have not read my work. How did the partition violence actually take place? These were the four categories involved in organized violence.
Question, maybe I can repeat this question. This question is that if British were the decision makers,
Yeah.
would they have prevented the partition from
Uh-huh.
happening? That's
Okay.
his question.
Acha, I'm so sorry. I didn't get that. I have to blame you. You didn't
Yeah.
speak loudly.
Let's have a picture with you.
एक मिनट sir.
I'm not a Punjabi. I'm sorry.
Repeat it again.
I'm not a Punjabi. I'm sorry.
Then he say it in English.
I'm not a Punjabi. I'm sorry. I couldn't.
He is not a Punjabi.
It was a joke. Sorry.
He is not a Punjabi. That's what he is.
No, my question was when we say just in terms of analysis that this person is responsible for this, that person is responsible for that. If the British are not allowing action A and B, and the other people are just trying to see what the British want and trying to do that, can you actually blame that person, or is it the system that is sort of directing them?
Yes, sir.
In a relation is like Germany.
I have, now that you mention it, I have introduced the Hobbesian state of nature to explain the partition. And what I have said is that let's say the Punjab represented the civil state, a state under law, as Hobbes wanted. That people, he said, are normally aggressive, selfish, and they seek power over others. But in the state of nature where we are all equal and equally free, we live in fear of one another. So our security is such that I must attack you before you attack me. So it's a war of all against all. Life is short, brutish, and nasty. These are his classic words. But human beings are not just that. Human beings do have the rationality of survival. So they decided to create a state in which total freedom, total equality is curtailed, and everybody is given security. So that's the civil state. I say that the British state which was presiding on was the civil state. As that civil state's authority began to wane, the state of nature type of characters, crooks, police, demobilized soldiers, such underworld networks started playing. And I've quoted Sir Evan Jenkins admitting that my writ doesn't go beyond my office. So that's very clear. But what happens? On the 14th, 15th night, the British rule comes to an end. So I say for 2 days, from the civil state, Punjab becomes the state of nature because nobody knew where the international border is. So people were attacking it all over. The Hindu Sikhs believed Lahore will come to India. The Muslims believed Amritsar, without Amritsar there is no Pakistan, without Gurdaspur, this, that, so. But when the Radcliffe Award was announced on the 17th, millions of people were on the wrong side. Then I've said that Hobbes' theory is only about the civil state and the state of nature. I've said there's a third state, and I call it the partisan state. That the two states which came into power on the 17th, when it became clear that this is Pakistan Punjab and this is Indian Punjab, then those administrations were complicit to letting the attacks take place or even taking part in them. And that is why from the 17th of August, when it was only 10,000 killed according to Evan Jenkins, at the end of the day, 800,000 people were killed because from both sides, the states were complicit in the forced migration. I have called it ethnic cleansing. You can call it genocide if you want to, of emptying Punjab of unwanted minorities. So that's the story. So the British blame must be there because they should have ensured a peaceful transfer of power. Let me pose this question. But they had no troops there anymore. Sir Evan Jenkins wanted 20,000 British troops to monitor this. But by that time, all the British troops had left. Only 7,000 had been kept to ensure that no white person in India is attacked. Only when a European life was in trouble, the British army was to intervene. So under these circumstances, once the power was transferred, the responsibility belongs to the Indian and Pakistani Punjab governments. Whereas in the rest of India, the Congress governments were able to ensure that the Muslims could live in peace. But the 6 million Muslims of East Punjab all had to run for their lives, except Malerkotla or Tiny State, or were killed. And vice versa, 5.5 million Hindus and Sikhs on our side, all of them were pushed into India or killed. So, once again, the question is, can we neatly then blame who did what? It's not easy. But I've given you the framework in which you can do your own sort of analysis. Thank you so much. Deeply touched, deeply moved, greatly honored. This was really a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.